any other questions on the philosophical and theoretical perspective? Yes.
Are we essentially saying that this is goodness for goodness sake, almost? Because the question that Ria touched on earlier, almost in every other religion and even the basics of Hinduism, I used to find that you do good and there's a reward maybe in this life or afterlife, or somehow karma will come back to you. So my mum always taught me, do good and good things will come to you. But I can't almost find what you're saying is that because we're connected, it's almost goodness for goodness sake, and it's not driven by sort of it's almost selfless motive. It seems, I'm just kind of trying to digest that distinction.
What is good and what is bad? It cannot be absolute. It depends on the purpose of that action. If a murderer uses the knife, he will destroy the life. The same injured person then entered into emergency and the doctor applied, say, another knife. That knife is a saver. The act of a murderer will end up into the jail as a result, but the doctor will be rewarded. So the usage of the knife is not the good or bad. The purpose of that usage is important. Therefore, in the world, we always say not good or bad. We always say dharma or adharma. What is the selfless? People may say selfless means individual selfless. Another person saying no, but nothing is selfless. I feel if you expand yourself, then self also becomes less. Then yourself is very less because you expand yourself, and that self can become everything in the universe. And that's why the good and bad, if we remove that whole terminology from our life, and dharma and adharma, then fighting also sometimes become a good, because the purpose is more important than the action.
One question. Do you think there's anything beyond dharma or other than dharma that can give us fulfillment that will be eternal, that we should be concentrating on, or alongside dharma concentrating on?
Dharma is mean. Dharma is the principle by which we live. Realization is more important. Who we are. When you realize what we are, who we are, for that dharma will be helpful. And that's why dharma is not an aim. Dharma is a mean. Dharma will never stop our actions. Like a river is flowing, dharma will never become like a wall or dam. It can only act as a sides bank. You can flow through that one. And therefore realization of yourself, that connectedness what I mentioned, is the aim. That completeness is the aim. With the completeness and seeing ourselves complete, inside and outside completeness, that's the fulfillment. People may call it as a moksha, different things. But it's not a linear thing. From here I want to go there. It cannot be linear. It's somewhere is the only experiential thing. And with the experience only we can feel like that. And that's why dharma is only mean to reach somewhere. And dharma only needs to the human beings. No need to think about the animals, because animals always follow dharma. Because we have a buddhi, intellect, we can become use our thing for wrong things, and therefore dharma is for the human beings only.
Can we say karma is the part of the dharma?
Yeah.
I'll just repeat that. Can we say that karma is part of dharma, for those of you that didn't hear?
Can we say dharma?
That karma is part of dharma.
Dharma is part of dharma.
Karma.
Karma is the part of the dharma.
Karma is a part of the dharma.
Oh, the karma is a part of the dharma. I see. Well, I think dharma is our way of overcoming karma, surely. we come into life with these with this karma, which is composed of samskaras and vasanas, impressions that have carried over from a previous life, and it is by using Dharma that by connecting with Dharma, by guiding ourselves with Dharma, that we can detach ourselves gradually from these forces, which are really unconscious forces. In Western philosophy, we have the idea of the unconscious, but it's been very much more better examined in Indian philosophy for very many centuries. So without Dharma, we are going to be working in a semi-automatic manner as our karma pushes us. And as we do that, of course, we are creating fresh karma, and so it goes on, and rebirth and rebirth. It is only through Dharma that we can start to modify this and start to change it and start to reduce the impact and the force with which the forces of karma are directing us, and in fact improve our karma.
So if the forces of karma are driving us, are we driving the forces of Dharma that are driving us?
I think karma is driving us, but we are guiding ourselves. When it comes to Dharma, we are guiding ourselves. Or of course we take our guidance from the teachers of the past, but it's up to us to apply it.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll move on to society and culture. We'll look at how cultural norms affect what defines what is fulfillment in my life. So starting off with, say I grew up here compared to if I grew up in India. Okay. So the things that define my fulfillment, you were saying, for example, serving others before you serve yourself. Do those factors that strive towards connectedness and fulfillment, are they affected by whether I grew up here, whether I grew up in India, whether I grew up in a poor family or a wealthy family? Does the culture and the society that I grew up in affect what I see as fulfillment in my life?
I don't think so. Anywhere you grow up in any religion, basically, same concept will be there. And that's why I give examples of the Aztec, the something Druid, something rich community in the European country, and something in Saudi Arabia as well, and in the India as well. The reason behind that one thing, anywhere you go, that serving others matter important. In Africa, there is a community in Kenya, and that community also has a similar concept that whenever you serve first others, then you serve yourself, basically. And that's why, whichever background you are, you can still hold exactly same values. And that's why only things are universal and eternal, I feel.
And what about if the culture doesn't teach those values?
Culture means not the dance, drama, dresses and something like that. Culture is elevation of your mindset and a manifestation of what you are. And therefore, if culture can't teach you, that the culture always teaches like that. Probably society or education system may not teach that one. So we need to create certain areas or some groups or clubs where this can be taught. But naturally, that's one of the things basically I wanted to mention. Whole concept of dharma, the concept of fulfillment, is not far. It's not sitting in the Buckingham Palace there. It is here with us. And that's why very, very naturally, normally, in a very normal guy, we can easily practice all those principles. No matter where you are born and whichever condition you're born.
Okay. Any other questions on society and culture? Yes, please.
You talk about how society has a lot of universal values, and one of the universal values that I see a lot of is hierarchy, which exists all over the world. I work with people that are very unfulfilled in life, and you talked about how one of the ways to overcome that is to connect. The people that I work with are materially perhaps less high, on that hierarchical status ladder, whatever we call it. Nobody wants to connect with them.
Nobody wants to connect.
People don't necessarily want to connect with the dregs of society. What would their kind of solution be? Because that is a very universal concept still.
Because this
I'm just
feeling
gonna
has something dampened.
Sorry, Dr. Ram, before you start, I'm just going to repeat the question for those of you that didn't hear. So, we talked about connectedness earlier. How do we connect with those who are materially less well off when often in a hierarchical society, there's the wealthy and there's the poor? So, how do we bring those together and how do we make a more connected society?
One word answer is seva. One word. What is seva? It's not helping others, response to the others. And therefore the feeling that they are part of my entire body, organic social body. If that feeling comes from a society, then society automatically will respond to that one. At present, in a hierarchy system, we feel we are not a part of that entire body. In our ancient sect, there is a so-called Purusha Sukta, is one of the texts. And Purusha Sukta mentioned about that entire society is one body. And it mentioned that the thousands of the hands, thousands of the heads are there. And therefore each component of that society is a part of that entire body. If that feeling we start bringing in the society through education and through awareness and through working through them, so the society will respond easily. Therefore we need to reach there. Now if my hand is not responding properly and there is what is a paralyzed hand. So to make it not paralyzed, I need to have some physiotherapy. Therefore all my muscles and everything will start pulling that one. So social physiotherapy has to start now. And that's why the work people will start relating. Once relation is there, born there, we will realize that one. One of the activities, Seva days normally happen. Seva day is not something doing Seva. Seva day is basically seeing the society, where are they now? Going, visiting the society, observing society, and feeling the society. It is my society. It is my people. And that's why the society will definitely change. So we need to create that connection with them. The blood flow should go to that part of the society, the body organ. And that's why the many activities we are already happening now, so more and more can be done.
So if I grew up in a household that was wealthy and I wasn't exposed to the other side, I wasn't exposed to those who are materially less well off, then how would I, if I wasn't aware of it, then how do I go about doing seva if I don't know that that exists?
If I have a wealthy family and we don't have exposure basically, we should call it Gautam Buddha for us. Because now it is a full chance now, okay, you can become a Gautam Buddha. Because Gautam Buddha was exactly similar situation. But as such, Vichar Manthan, Seva activities, different activities will be there. But one thing is, today youngsters, youth, are exposed to social media. The YouTube videos are there. And that's why I don't think so they are in the cocoons. Our world is coming very close now. They are responding immediately. Initially, the earthquake happened in Nepal 20 years before, we wouldn't know that. But now, immediately in the evening, we start collecting the money for that. It's a very good sign of that connectedness. More and more people are coming and going there out in African jungles to serve for them. It has always happened like that. So, with the pure heart, if we visit all those things, experience, I think the things may change.
Yes, Satyajit.
This is a question for Dr. Cross specifically, but of course Dr. Vidya can answer as well. But Dr. Cross, this is a question for you really. I mean, everybody's talked about fulfillment, but couldn't the argument also be that when you talk about the social or the society as an organism, that you lose the individual, that the individual becomes diminished? And we live in a society of global capitalism where the individual is supreme. And the argument could well be that actually, the greatest happiness for the greatest number is the most effective way of governing a society. And ultimately this notion about the material element that you mentioned, that the Western world has been focusing purely on the materialistic elements of human nature. Isn't the argument on that one as well, just as the economic argument, that actually we are just an individual organism, a sophisticated primate, and even that sophistication is questionable. We're just a primate with a larger prefrontal cortex than a chimpanzee, and so all of these emotions that we have, all these experiences that we have, is actually just an illusion. It is actually that, you know, everything can just be boiled back down to chemistry in my brain, the biochemistry. So both from an economic perspective and both from a neurological perspective, aren't we just material animals? And this idea of fulfillment, therefore, is fulfill your material needs and desires, and that will automatically make you feel fulfilled. Isn't that sort of the counter argument to everything everybody here is saying?
Well, you're quite right. It certainly is the counter argument. It's not a counter argument that I will go along with. I think really we have to understand what we really are. And even if we leave alone the body, you're talking about thinking about really in saying we are the result of material forces. That is really tantamount to saying we are the body. But even if we go a little better than that, a little higher than that, and say, well, we understand we're not the body, and most human beings in fact do understand that they're not the body most of the time anyway. If we go beyond that and we say, okay, we're the mind, this is also wrong, because what is the mind operating in? The mind is operating in our consciousness, and it is really this which is always there. However many tricks and somersaults and so on the mind performs, the mind like monkey, as I was saying before, it's still all happening within this overall consciousness. And if we think back to our childhood, we know we are the same person that we were in our childhood. Everything has changed except that one consciousness, that consciousness that connects us with our childhood. So, in my view, it's all about finding out who we really are. And that, I think, has been the message of a large part of Indian thought, anyway.
Yes, you're right. We can think like that. That's the one type of consciousness level. Then you can go beyond as well, because you are a human being. So it is not a wrong notion that I'm an individual, I'm a biochemical, something here, and therefore I can think of the individual. And very funnily, we speak the language where the letter for I is also capital I, not the small letters. That's the culture we are living in. But then, are we happy thinking about ourselves only? So the realization is not. And that's why the organic way, there are many theories came up. Capitalism one of the, communism also one of the, all the very good efforts. Marx also very honest guy, honest philosopher, earnest philosopher. He thought for the betterment, fulfillment, betterment of society, for happiness of the society. Therefore, all those experiments happen on the basis of this as an individual materialistic freedom. But we realized that when it didn't work. Today is the position of the America, the Western countries, where are they now? And that's why this Vichar Manthan matters a lot, where they can create that paradigm shift in the mind that do we have something more than that? And therefore, if I'm not happy now, is it something I'm missing or something more than that I need to know? That inquiry definitely will go beyond and beyond, like Mr. Cross mentioned about that one, that will go towards the mind as well. Then mind doesn't stop there, then there is an intellect beyond that as well. And therefore beyond the intellect there is a soul, a social soul we call as a. And that's why when you are thinking about the materialistic individual, amazing, wonderful thing, but are we happy in that position? And that's why we need to move forward towards next position of our consciousness. And that consciousness level, the discussion not only we are having, but the fulfillment as an individual is also valid, is also right.